Morning, everyone. Welcome to the monthly roundtable discussion organized by the Council for Strategic Affairs. Today is Saturday, June 14, 2025. It's 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in US, and it is around 7:30 p.m. in India. Those of you who registered on our TrueKarma link probably saw this flyer with the pictures of our esteemed panelists. The topic for today's roundtable discussion is, can Trump 2.0 administration end the Ukraine-Russia war? And we have a number of distinguished panelists that I will be introducing fairly soon. A little bit about Council for Strategic Affairs. CSA imparts education in the field of international relations. CSA fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. The Council encourages strategic studies in general to raise the level of awareness. We unequivocally condemn terrorism in all forms worldwide. CSA aims to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. The Council promotes people-to-people contacts and track-to diplomacy. Please subscribe, like, and share the CSA YouTube channel. For sake of information, it is registered as a 501c3 organization with the IRS in the United States. Our US-based audience, we request you to support and donate to the CSA, and the link is there on our website. Our activities include a monthly roundtable discussion on second Saturday of each month at 10 a.m., just like we are having it today. We have a monthly guest lecture by a domain expert on the fourth Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. We have a one-on-one interview with me. It's called Strategically Speaking with Dr. Adityanjee. We organize symposia, meetings, and conferences. We promote publication of articles on geopolitics and related subjects. We do have a summer internship program for college students and a fellowship training program in strategic studies. Currently, we have two fellows, Khushi Mishra and Harsh Sinha. Again, the request is to like, subscribe, and share the CSA YouTube channel. And those of our audience who are based in US, please donate and support to CSA. So let's come to the topic at hand. Can Trump 2.0 administration end the Ukraine-Russia war? And I am going to introduce our esteemed panelists. The first panelist who will be speaking is Mr. Amod Desai. He's a member of our board of directors, and he has a long intro. If anybody is interested, they can go on to his LinkedIn profile. I try to introduce him with just one phrase. He's our belt-waist cyber security guru. So that should explain to you the depth and breadth of his experience. Our second esteemed panelist is Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana. Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana has an illustrious career in Indian Army for 45 years. After retirement, he has been intellectually very active. He has participated in various United Nations organizations, think tanks, more than 450 publications. There is not a single day you do not see Major General Asthana on the TV or some other place on a global media platform. Currently, he is Director of Instructions at United Service Institution of India, where he trains over 1,500 Indian military officers for various promotions and competitive examinations. Major General Asthana has been on our platform several times, and we are always pleased to host him because he comes with very incisive analysis. Our third panelist is Brigadier Arun Sahgal. Brigadier Sahgal is described as the Dean or the guru of strategic studies for India's armed forces. He has been at this for a very long time. He has a PhD in strategic studies. I'm honored to say that Brigadier Arun Sahgal is a member of the International Advisory Board of the Council for Strategic Affairs. And in that role, he has done a stellar service to this organization. He has been associated with multiple think tanks throughout his strategic studies career. So I will leave it at that, and I go to our last panelist, who is Ambassador Shashank. Ambassador Shashank is a former Foreign Secretary to the Government of India. He has served as India's ambassador to Denmark, South Korea, Libya. He joined the Foreign Service in 1966 and finally retired as Secretary to Government of India in July 2004. He is a mentor to us, and he has been on our platform before. So we will go on to the topic at hand. I have a couple of pictures here, so that shows you Ukraine and Russia and this pink thing. This is on June 11th, areas controlled by Russia. And this actually shows the infrastructure, targets all over Ukraine by Russia. And again, this is showing you the latest map, what Russia has actually incorporated or annexed from Ukraine. So a little bit of introduction to the topic. President Trump promised repeatedly during his election campaign to end the Ukraine-Russia war within 24 hours of being inaugurated into the office. He repeatedly touted his credentials as a peacemaker. And he stated during the election campaign that he can talk to Putin and convince him to end the war. However, during Trump's second term in the office, we saw a remarkable spectacle in the Oval Office in which the Chief Marshal or Administrator of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, was publicly humiliated. A lot of pressure was put on Ukraine to sign a mineral deal that was supposed to end the Ukraine-Russia war. That by just being there in Ukraine, Russia will stop attacking. The mineral deal was finally signed, but Putin did not end the war. President Trump also wanted to gatecrash a proposed summit in Turkey between Zelensky and Putin, but that meeting was a non-starter. More recently, from his statements on the social media, Trump is getting frustrated with Putin for not listening to him about the need to end the war. There are multiple players in this war, and the European Union is still committed to defeat Russia in this war and keeps promising more help to the Ukraine. So what is the real end game in this quagmire? Does President Trump has any more leverage with either parties in the war? Or if the third or fourth wheels, i.e. the EU and NATO, are the determining factors? Most importantly, what does Putin want? Does he want entire Ukraine? There are some chatter in the establishment. No, he may not end even after getting the entire Ukraine. So we have four panelists who will be making their opening statements, 8 minutes each, and they have different, focus. Mr. Desai will be focusing on the US perspective on this issue. Major General Asthana will be focusing on the military perspective. Brigadier Arun Sahgal will be talking about the strategic dimension to this conflict. And Ambassador Shashank will be talking about the diplomatic aspect of this particular conflict. Before I call in our experts, there are some housekeeping rules. Please keep yourself muted to avoid noise interference. Please change your cell phone setting to vibration mode. Please do not try to interrupt our esteemed panelists. Only those members of the audience who identify themselves openly will be allowed to ask questions, so no anonymous questioners, please. All the questions are moderated by the chat room. Please be precise and specific in asking a question and don't send lengthy comments in the form of a monologue. Lastly, this program is being recorded. It's also being live streamed on our YouTube channel and it'll be available on our website. And my request to our US-based audience, please support and donate to CSA. And to all the people who watch this recording, please subscribe, like, and share the CSA YouTube channel. Without further ado, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to invite Mr. Amod Desai to speak on the US perspective. Mr. Desai, please go ahead. Kindly unmute yourself.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Adityanjee, for giving me this opportunity to speak with the larger audience on such an important and sensitive topic that's affecting the whole world right now. What you laid down as a background about this Russia-Ukraine war, it was a very well chronicalized points on what is happening currently and what happened just in the recent past. But really, if you want to look at the perspective from why this war itself exists, really you have to go back to the genesis of about 70 years before when NATO was formed. It was formed after a post-World War II, and in the shape and form of a Cold War that immediately started after the Second World War, and that under that scenario, when the signing members of the NATO, when they joined, they envisioned that Russia, with its Cold War and Cold War doctrine, they would start up another war. That's what led to creating of a NATO. From the point of view, if you look at the NATO a list of articles, you have Article 8 and then Article 10. That's really the point where the members who are part of the NATO, they really form as a close-knit group, where if a country is attacked, then certainly the other members will support. And when it says other members, really the one who leads the NATO, and that is United States of America, USA, they would take a charge in repelling the attack coming from Russia predominantly. So that was the genesis of building the NATO. There's another article 10, that says that we open up our arms for everyone. So it's an open door policy. That really is another sticking point, where subsequently the NATO expansion has been occurring with the good intentions, in a way of promoting Western values, Western civilization across to the eastern part of the Europe. Certainly, when you look at the way Russia would look, it was not taken anytime from since the formation of NATO to now in a positive way. Coming to the post-Cold War era, where at the precipice of the Berlin Wall falling and Gorbachev really trying to end the whole Cold War era, there was tactical understanding that the NATO would not expand, because there was there was kind of a understanding between Gorbachev and Reagan in those times. That's exactly what Trump administration started when they came for Trump Admission 2.0. If you look at some of the remarks made by President Trump, he always mentioned about this particular pact, which was a verbal pact. Also reminded by Putin himself that there used to be a pact of this kind, but the NATO never really followed that pact. So from that point of view, if you see, the expansion of NATO has been there still now till December 2024, when the Sweden joined the NATO forces. If you look at the way the NATO is set up, they are really encircling Russia in the north via Sweden and Turkey at the south via in the south. And then if you have few another countries, one of the sticking point is Pakistan, who is a non-European uh, uh, NATO observer, you can say, or they are in that class where they don't form as a part of the NATO group, but they are part. They do get a seat as an attendee over there. So there are many such kind of countries which are inimical to the those countries where they're exactly opposite to Russia. So under that precipice, if you look at the way the Russia looks at creating the turbulence or creating this war, is they are really protecting their own territory, which may not be true, because if you look from the US point of view, US had been always fair in trying to promote a peace, even though they have been supporting the Ukraine war. From the way the Ukraine war has progressed, there has been certainly the arms and ammunition provided by US to Ukraine, uh, financial supports in most of the, it has been the most important part of the support that Ukraine has got. If you continuing with this narrative about US support to Ukraine, then the Trump administration 2.0 really changed the dynamics, or you can say changed the path towards peace. Now, why do you need peace really? If you look at the overall population, the population of Europe is really declining. Uh, there is a need of of commerce to grow. Certainly, if you look at the way the Ukraine war has affected the entire supply chain of the whole world, you really look for peace if US has to grow economically as well, because this war has affected the supply chain of US economy. And also, the second part is President Trump, when he was in the first as a 45th president, he was the one who really promoted the anti-Russian, or you can say uh, not anti-Russian, you can say the peace talks. He tried to promote that, but it was not taken up in a good form. In the second term, he really wanted to press that agenda to a next level, where he acknowledged, if you recall his statement in January, that we need to kind of work some the NATO understanding with Russia, so that we can bring Russia to the table of negotiating. So from the point of view, US, since the second Trump 2.0 has always been taking a step towards peace, considering the number of young kids that have been dying every day and every week, that causes really a social unrest within the whole European continent, and as well as the economic growth opportunities that are being missed out. Not to forget about the minerals deal. Minerals has really become really important since the modern, after COVID, you can say, since last 3-4 years. Even though they were in use before, but now with the advent of AI, really that minerals required for creating many of the products, or you can say the AI products, has taken the center stage. So assuming that US goes with the golden handshake with Ukraine, and giving assurance to Russia that everything will be in the form of a treaty. That's what USA or President Trump is actually promoting, and it is in a good faith. And hopefully, the Russians and Ukrainians, they get to some sense and really promote peace, because there's a death happening on both the sides. Uh, So that's what I would say in opening statement. Thank you, Adityanjee.
Thank you, Mr. Desai, for a comprehensive viewpoint from US point of view. Now it's my honor and pleasure to invite Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana, who will be talking about military aspect of this war and can Trump 2.0 administration make any impact. Major General Asthana has spoken on this topic several times, so it will be a fresh outlook on the current situation.
Thank you, Dr. Adityanjee, eminent panelists, team of CSA, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting topic, can Trump 2.0 end Russia-Ukraine war? And I am covering the military part of it. To end a war, what you require is both sides must first agree to agree. Unfortunately, this idea of agreeing to agree is becoming difficult in a manner that Russia has gained momentum in the war and it wants to make the best of it. As far as Ukraine is concerned, it is losing, but with the kind of covert operation which it launched one day before the peace talk, it seems that there is some kind of incentive between them, Ukraine, and their European friends to continue with the war because they still feel that if we can weaken Russia, why not? So under these circumstances, peace for the time being looks a distant dream as of now. At the same time, few things are very clear. I totally agree with what my co-panelist mentioned a little earlier. As far as America is concerned and President Trump is concerned, he has no intention of getting into war with Russia by any stretch of imagination. But the question is, are others trying to drag America into this war? The answer is yes. Zelensky, whatever he did, is actually trying. And if you recall, when Zelensky visited White House, President Trump was quite blatant and open to say that you are driving everybody to Third World War, you are driving everybody to nuclear war. And his actions are also almost in those lines, even if you see the last military, shall I say, last covert action which he did. So if that be so, let me explain as to what all has happened and the military analysis of whatever has happened and what is likely to follow through some slides. And let me share my screen with you. Yeah, can you see this? Can you see the screen, please? Can everybody see?
Okay. Yeah, we can see.
Yes,
okay.
We are able to see. We are able.
Yeah, now everybody knows what happened with the kind of audience we have. I don't have to explain that part. This was February 22. After that, when the military operations took place, now so many people feel that Russia went to Kyiv and could not capture it. Russia never meant to capture Kyiv for the simple reason because Kyiv is too big a town to be captured. But what was the aim of Russia was that they should be able to capture Donbass, and to do that they had to threaten a value objective in depth, and that value objective had to be Kyiv. Now there were some miscalculations made, military miscalculations. They thought that perhaps if they threaten Kyiv and with the shock and awe effect, maybe that Zelensky will give in, which did not happen. They also underestimated the kind of support which Western countries are going to give. That also was a mistake. And the kind of logistics and their unpreparedness to tackle the built-up areas that brought them a lot of casualties. So what they did thereafter was they pulled back. And they pulled back in a line to make it a viable defense line. They pulled back the other side of Dnieper River, the other side of Kherson River, and made a viable defense line and learned their lessons. At that same time, Europe, led by USA during Biden administration, wanted to launch a counteroffensive. This was happening towards 2023. Counteroffensive failed, and thereafter, when we see in May 2024, this is the situation which Dr. Adityanjee also showed. Now, if that be so, this is the picture of the viable defense line which they created because they learned their lesson that you should launch offensive operations from a defense line, and because of that defense line, I think Russians could make a fair amount of gain. Now, in the meantime, something else happened. So this is the area, this I think has already been shown to you. Now, after that, something happened. That was the Kursk offensive. Again, an ill-conceived operation without realizing that Russia is surrounding that area from all sides. So anyway, notwithstanding that, Ukraine did launch an offensive of this kind. And subsequently, when you see, so earlier, in the earlier side, what I showed was that was a war of maneuver. So initially, they started a war of maneuver. There was a turning movement towards Kyiv, and the defenses of Donbass were turned. That was as far as the previous slide is concerned. In this case, it was war of attrition. So you would have seen that if this happened, Kursk happened in October 27. This is the status in October 27. So by May 27, that means in 6 months, the Kursk, it took for them to push out Ukrainians from Kursk. So then it was a war of attrition, and Ukrainians lost fair amount of manpower as well as the Western equipment, which till then was doing very well. But after Kursk offensive, I think the credibility of the Western equipment also went down to some extent. And now you see the again battle of attrition. This is Pokrov. They have taken a hell of a lot of time. Almost 6 months we have been hearing about Pokrov. They have not been able to capture. Russians have not been able to capture it. Obviously, I think Ukrainians are giving a very tough fight there. And therefore, what they have done is, now that the momentum is on their side, they have started getting into this province also, that is Dnipro Oblast as well. So with the result, they are perhaps trying to approach Pokrov from the other side and clear off the remaining of Donetsk region as well. Now, this is what the operation is. Now, the problem is, as far as the conflict termination is concerned, there are certain, when we define in military conflict termination, can there be a complete surrender of Ukraine? A question mark. Can Russians be made to withdraw? The answer is no. So the possibility is that it has to be a negotiated end, if not today or tomorrow. The question is still then, maybe that Russia will also continue to do what they are doing to gain better position and gain more ground as well. And also, one thing which the whole world must remember, that it's not the case of victory. Earlier, Western countries used to say Putin must lose. Thereafter, they started seeing the situation on ground that Putin must not win. And then for, I think, almost information war, they were doing very well, the Western countries, in a manner that for 3 years, they have been posing as Ukraine is winning, but it was not actually happening that in the manner in which they were posing. And also, the question is, if you concentrate exclusively on victory, then, and this is a quote by Little Heart, and give no thought to after effect, you may be too exhausted to profit by peace. So whether peace will be there or not is a question mark. So this is as far as I will now end and say few more words and get back. So now the point is that there is a case wherein Russians have increased their surge capability. They have increased their protection tremendously. They got a fair amount of beating militarily by drones. Today, they are one of the largest drone manufacturers in the world. Same is the case with Ukraine also. They also innovated tremendously in a manner that they were also not making drones, but I think they are the largest drone manufacturers in Europe as of now. Ukraine has also shown tremendous amount of resilience, and the last operation wherein the bombers were targeted, that was a masterpiece operation in terms of a covert operation. So I am sure that was again a very classical operation. Now, as far as the chances of peace are concerned, I do not see in the immediate future. Let us see how the things shape up. The other intention of the Western countries was to weaken Ukraine, as well as to weaken Russia, as well as to financially destroy Russia. I don't think they are financially destroyed. So that I don't think has been achieved. But as far as the achievement of the aims of Russians are concerned, if you see their first aim, initial aim was, I'll just take 30 more seconds. Their first aim was that we must capture Donbass region and make a land corridor and connect Donbass as well as southern region, make a land corridor, connect Crimea, number one. Number two, of course, hidden desire was there, a change of regime, but they never mentioned about it. The aim plus was that we should capture the Transnistria as well, Odessa, and join up with Transnistria to make Ukraine landlocked. And also, they were looking at, now it seems that the aim has changed, the goalpost has changed. Now they are looking at the linguistic boundary, and that is why they are looking at Kharkiv as well as Sumy, and they were also looking some other areas in the south. If this is the aim, and of course the strategic aim continues to be arrest the eastward expansion of NATO, and now their aim also includes getting out of sanction. Now, less than this, I don't think less than getting out of sanctions, Russia is not going to compromise or talk peace or go in for any agreement of ceasefire. That's what I feel. So that is where we are. Back to you.
Thank you, Major
Dr.
General Asthana. Now it's my pleasure and honor to invite Brigadier Arun Sahgal to give his pearls of wisdom on this particular topic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Great. A lot about has been said about the operations, the American position. I will just lay out the strategic play that is currently taking place. It's important to understand that part also while we look at the military and other aspects. First fundamental point is that Mr. Putin and President Trump have spoken twice, and they have had reasonable degree of conversation. Resulting from that, there were earlier meetings in Saudi Arabia between the Americans and the Russians, and then came the Ukrainians. But now the most important issue is that the Istanbul meeting. There have been meetings in Istanbul, and in the last meeting, which does not last for too long, but which is significant, in that the memorandum of what the Russians want in the ceasefire has been given. I'll come to that memorandum, what it covers in just a bit. So the important point is that as a consequence of these discussions, the position that Russia wants to adopt in furtherance towards moving towards ceasefire has been laid out in a three-step process. From the Russian perspective, this is based on my discussion with some Russian analysts and other people in Europe, is that they are taking this position is that this is a slightly less than what they offered in March 22 when the Istanbul meeting took place, but substantially reasonable to what is being offered today. And they are saying is that this is on the table, and this is the negotiating position. Two things have happened in the meanwhile. Between these two discussions, one has been on May 17 an attack on a helicopter of Mr. Putin. And the second element we all know is that the attack on the strategic bombers and the railway bridges in Russia. As far as the attack on the bombers is concerned, technically speaking, it has invoked, Russia, if it wanted to invoke, could have invoked under Section 19C of its deterrence policy. I repeat, under 19C of deterrence policy, which clearly states an attack on the strategic assets will force Russia to respond against any power, whether nuclear or non-nuclear. But what has been done by President Putin is that he has called these attacks not as attacks by Ukrainian military forces, but terrorist attacks. There is a reason why he is calling them as acts of terror and not a direct attack by the Ukrainian forces. The logic of that is that a terrorism attack cannot be attributed to a nation. It will be attributed to a particular people, supported by a particular nation, etc., etc. It has a lower degree of let's say seriousness. Aim being that he wants to give peace a chance, and he's clear in his mind that the political play which is going on between United States and Russia, both on the Ukraine issue as well as on the bilateral dialogue, which is also incidentally going on. 2 meetings have been held of the bilateral dialogue. He wants to give it a chance. So the state of play as far as this thing is concerned is that the Russians are right now allowing full chance to the Americans to deliver on the promises that they have been making in the visits of Kellogg and the other gentleman, Vyskov, who's been going to Russia and having discussions with the Russian leaders. Now we come to the issue of Europeans. Europeans are a little rattled by the fact that the direction in which this whole thing is moving. Because President Trump, in his discourses, is trying to push across an agenda that Ukraine must accommodate Russia.
Sir, you are muted. Kindly unmute yourself. You got muted. Kindly unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll come back. So the whole issue is that the Russians want to give peace a chance and allow President Trump to deliver on his promises. As far as the Europeans are concerned, they are concerned that Ukraine is being asked to give far too many concessions. There is no clarity on the ceasefire, and they are certainly not very much interested in the ceasefire memorandum which has been given by the Russians. So let me just come to highlight some basic issues of the proposal. Recognition of Crimea and the 4 oblasts, including Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. Withdrawal of the military and paramilitary forces, neutrality of Ukraine, ban on deployment of outside military forces. Confirmation of Ukraine as a non-nuclear state, corporate cap on military forces and weapons, non-Nazization propaganda, which the second section includes no military supplies, no foreign troops, no further subversion and sabotage, and announcement of a date of elections. I mean, these are the main issues that have been laid out by the Russians. Now, this is what the state of play is. The understanding, based on at least my discussions with various players in this game, is that the Russians are aware of the fact that most of these things are not going to be delivered in the fashion they are produced. So, but it creates a strong negotiating position. Now, the ball, by doing so, they have put the ball in the American court as well as the European, the NATO court. They have to now come out with a counter strategy. In the meantime, as General Asthana rightly pointed out, they are slowly moving towards acquisition of areas and cleaning up the lines of in the occupied territory to ensure that whenever any ceasefire comes, they have the territorial control which is they deem necessary for their strategic protection. The problem now is that the Europeans are feeling left out of this. There was this NSA's meeting, as you are all aware, and in that meeting, the whole thing was being done is that we will not accept this, we must continue to arm Ukraine. The question is, Ukraine armed to what degree? and for what purpose? The concern that the European have at this particular point in time is, and purely in strategic construct, is this: if a deal on Ukraine is reached, and Russia continues to be the strong player as it is, it might not do anything in the immediate future, but it will lead to some degree of resurrection of Russia. And that resurrection of Russia will be a direct challenge. And that's why you see people like Mr. Metz from Germany and the French president are deadly against any of this kind of deal. But the sad part of this whole thing is what else is on offer? And you cannot continue to let the Ukrainians die. So this is what the state of play at this particular point in time is. And the last point I want to make is this, is as far as the bilateral negotiations are concerned, some small items have been put by the Russians on the table to the Americans to see how purposeful they are. But the message that we are getting is that the Americans are playing for time as far as bilateral negotiations are concerned. And this is where it has become a catch-22 situation. The Americans are saying is that we will move forward in our bilateral negotiations if we see some movement on the ceasefire. But on the other hand, the other side is saying is, we will wait you out and we'll see what you do. In the meantime, we see how serious are you in bilateral resolution. And as far as the Russians are concerned, apart from all these issues, two issues are very important. One issue is lifting of the sanctions. Clearly, lifting of the sanctions is the most important issue, and acceptance of Russian role in the regional politics, and that's again as part of Eurasian larger system. So this is where the whole story is playing around at this particular point in time. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Sahgal. It's always a pleasure to listen to your point of view. And as I had said in the beginning, pearls of wisdom. It's very enlightening. Now it's my honor and pleasure to invite Ambassador Shashank, who brings to us decades of diplomatic experience. So, sir, the platform is yours, and we are ready for your presentation.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Adityanjee. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the co-panelists have already explained the situation, the ground position as of now. I think what I can perhaps share is the perception battle which has been going on. So once that is in the mind, so how do you get it out and on the table, whether by way of a treaty to be signed or by way of a total surrender by one of the sides? You know, when the Cold War ended and this agreement was signed between Gorbachev and Reagan, and subsequently it was reiterated by the West that the NATO will not move ahead any further. But this has not been possible because of the internal dynamics of NATO countries, especially those countries which were joining the new entrants to the European Union, that they not only wanted to be in the European Union, they also wanted to be part of the NATO and to have access to all the latest armament and ammunition. So that is why they did not want two categories of the European Union members. And so therefore that is one. And secondly, many of the East European countries have personal feelings having been part of the Warsaw Pact and of the Soviet area of influence. So I think they have some good feelings, but many bad feelings also. And therefore, there is within the European countries, I think there is a feeling, especially among UK, France, and Germany, that they have their own constant struggle to have the preeminent position in Europe. Of course, the world also, but in European continent. And therefore, they feel that if they support the Ukraine position with arms, it will strengthen their role in Eastern European countries. So I think they are all willy-nilly moving into a position where they just are obliged to give more and more weaponry to Ukraine, and leading to a situation where, as I think our predecessors mentioned just now, that President Trump is very keen to finish this war. He wants to, he has overall given an idea that yes, the Russian positions should not be totally left out. They should be accepted to the extent possible. But point is that within America also, we are finding that President Trump's position is not becoming stronger. Firstly, we have to keep in mind that this is second term. Unless the Constitution of America is changed, this will be his last term. Now, whether Republicans will continue in governance after him, or there will be a change of government, I think Europeans might be thinking that if we can somehow prolong the situation towards the next round of elections in America, it's quite likely that once again we'll find a more active approach from the American side, not to give in to the Russian demands, but to make sure that Russia never again can become a threat to any of the European countries. And therefore, we don't even know. I mean, for example, that what happened to the Russia-German gas pipeline, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, whether it was again, has Mr. Trump said that it was a terrorist operation? I've not heard any such thing so far. The Americans have not indicated who did that. There are a few American journalists who have been saying that, well, they have a good guess as to who did it, and perhaps the Americans in some form were involved in this game. So which means that if that is the feeling among the European countries, they feel that America does not have a united position, and therefore they can just prolong the present scenario, keep giving more and more weaponry to Ukraine, and in the meantime also hope what our Prime Minister Modi has been telling President Putin, that this is not an era of war. Please don't use nuclear weapons. So work on that kind of moral posturing by the global South and India to ensure that the conflict does not enter the nuclear era. The worry which President Trump has. And I think we just saw that President Trump, in fact, telephoned President Putin about the drone attacks on the strategic planes, strategic jets, because he was afraid that there is a bilateral understanding between USA and Russia to keep track of each other's strategic jets, to make sure that they are not in air or they are not being loaded with nuclear weapons. And here something was done to the Russians, and they were afraid that Ukraine might not have done it on their own. And the Russians might feel that, well, it is the Americans who have given some support from signals, from intelligence, and all kinds of things. So therefore, he wanted to make it absolutely clear that bilaterally, they are very much according to the script which has already been stated by President Trump. The point is that now this is the issue we have to keep in mind. Can the Americans, can the NATO countries convince the Russians that they will not move further ahead? They will not try to have this war of attrition to reduce the Russian power. On the other hand, one has to also keep in mind that they don't want President Putin to disappear from the scene, because they have seen what has happened in many of the West Asian countries where strong men have disappeared, but then stronger men ruled from the West have come on the scene. And many refugees have moved into the Western countries, especially European countries, which have changed the composition of population in Europe. And that has brought about a radical change in the thinking of the political processes in the European countries. So I think all these things we have to keep in mind. India gets influenced because Pakistan, as was said, that well, is a part also as a most important non-NATO ally of the Americans. And so they have access to most of the weaponry which the NATO countries have, though under certain conditions. So therefore, India has to keep in mind that whatever happens, towards west and northwest has a security implications for India, and they keep a close watch on all that, what is going on. I think we are almost reaching the end of my time. I will stop here and I can come back later on as and when we continue our discussions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Shashank, for your perspective from a diplomatic point of view. And I think that is very important because we tend to forget the voice of the global south in these kind of things. Essentially, the war between Ukraine and Russia is a white tribal war, which Europeans have a penchant. They have been fighting throughout the history, and it is the European conflicts that tend to become larger, more magnified conflicts. So the voice of global south, how other countries feel about it, is very, very important. And I'm thankful to Ambassador Shashank for bringing that particular perspective. So we have the Q&A session now. I see that there are a couple of questions in the chat room. So what I'll do, I'll take the questions from the audience first, and if there is a time, then I may ask some questions myself. So the first question is from Dr. Vineet Singh, who is based in Canada. Dr. Vineet Singh writes, though Putin looks invincible, but given the stalemate, would there be more aggressive efforts by NATO parties to instigate regime change in Russia? Any of the four panelists have the opportunity to respond, depending upon who wants to go first.
Okay.
Okay, Brigadier Sahgal.
Okay. As per my understanding, Putin has a very strong political base as things stand today. He has a strong backing of the oligarchs, and he also has a strong backing of the bureaucracy, and even people, by and large, prices have not gone for he. One of the reasons is that he has kept political control in his hand and not allowed the military control, military forces, the special military operations to get out of hand, is primarily because he understands what has happened. As per the figures which are available, at least to people like me, there are about close to 1 lakh casualties the Russians have suffered. So close to 1 lakh casualties. That's a huge amount. So given all this, at this particular point in time and juncture, Putin's political standing remains reasonably strong. And I don't think anything that the West can do. In fact, it's the other way around. The perception is the West is divided. The West doesn't have a coherent strategy. So there is no point in doing any compromise to the West. That's what my short answer.
For our audience, because it's an international audience, 1 lakh means 100,000. So just so there is some no confusion, some of the outlets in the West are saying that Russia may have lost between 300 to 400,000 soldiers or conscripts, forcing them to induct actually North Korean soldiers. So that is another figure bandied about. But if any other panelists want to join this particular issue on regime change in Russia, please feel free to do so right now.
May I add a point there?
Sure.
See, as far as the popularity of President Putin is concerned, I was in Russia somewhere around January this year. Let me tell you that the kind of support which Putin has and what he has been able to sell to his people is that the entire West has ganged up against us, and they want to destroy Russia and take the resources of Russia. Now, this is something which most of the people are convinced. And with this kind of national spirit, I don't think there is any chance for anybody to think that a regime change can be instigated in Russia so easily. It's not that easy. Even today, the percentage support which he has, is more than any other Western leader. And if you see the amount of experience which he has and the way he has reacted in recent past, many people, even in Russia, after this attack on the bombers, were trying to instigate that he should go for a bigger option, maybe a tactical nuclear weapon or something like that. But he was quite convinced that no, that is not the point. And he read it exactly the way Brigadier Sahgal explained, that he has tempered it down in a manner that it doesn't, the conflict doesn't go out of the hand and the bigger picture is not lost. So he has shown a fair amount of maturity. He has popular support. I don't think that almost all Western leaders have changed during his time from the beginning of war, except a few leaders. So I don't think everybody has desired that there should be a regime change in Putin, but I think everybody's desires remain the same.
Thank you. Mr. Amod Desai, kindly unmute yourself. I know you want to join.
Yes. Well, I totally agree with Dr. Asthana ji and Sahgal ji. Actually, the way the scenario in Russia is, Putin has a very deep popular support. But if you look at the other side of the aisle, where you have the Western countries, bunch of NATO members, they themselves are divergent in their approach towards the problem created by themselves itself. The reason why I would say is that if you look at President Trump's stance, initially in Trump 1 administration, they did not say that Crimea was part of the Russia. So they denounced the Russian policy of annexation of Crimea. But if you look at the Trump 2, where they understood after 3 years of typical gruesome war, where the loss for the American supply chain, the American way of dominance, it was being threatened. So certainly that was one of the reasons. But if you look at Trump as a whole, he has always been promoter of peace. In a way, he might not be having a perception created that he is not a peace person, he is a warmongering, but actually, yeah, on the other side of the aisle, that is in US aisle, I'm talking about the right Republican Party, they have always been promoters of peace, and which really the Trump adopted it. Also in Trump 1, a very important point is there was a defense deal provided by Trump 1 administration, that was a Javelin weapon, right? So that Javelin weapon really, yes, AGM, right?
Anti-tank guided missile.
Javelin missiles. Javelin missile. Yeah.
Correct. And then that was the lethal weapon that really stopped Russia from actually taking over the rest of the initial plan of going towards Kharkiv and the Khorasan. Now, if you look from the Trump's point of view, yes, whatever he provided to Ukraine was helpful, but now he wants to stop it. He wants to stop it and bring peace to the table. And the way it can be done is only via diplomacy. There's no other way without diplomacy. And we could always also think, this is like my thought. We could always think that there should be a treaty between US and Russia, which verbal started in Reagan and Gorbachev time. It should be now constitutionalized that no further expansion would occur of NATO, and there would be a red line where Russia would have a comfort, as well as they both, and all the sanctions on Russia can be lifted. Plus, Trump's promotion, of course, is have access to Russian minerals, as well as democratizing the Russian minerals across the world, so that Russia does not have a monopoly over it. Plus, China does not have the only access of those minerals, which are spread across the eastern, or you can say the Asian continent. So from that point of view, it is win-win for America. That's what President Trump is really pushing for. And Mr. Putin is also is agreeing to that point, but there are many divergent views in West that are forming the walls around it. And I think that's where we should kind of always promote diplomacy and try to have a treaty across both the table and hands. I would say
Thank you,
that.
Mr. Desai, for your opinion. I just want to request Ambassador Shashank if he wants to have his comments on this particular question.
Yes, I agree with all the co-panelists that as we move closer towards the end of the Trump era, I think they will move towards a diplomatic solution because it's in their interest. Trump wanted his NATO partners to contribute 5% of their GDP for their own defense. I think most of the NATO countries are moving in the direction of that percentage. So that helps Trump's agenda. Second thing is that, of course, the American specifications have to be accepted by all the NATO countries, and the leadership of the Americans in the NATO will remain. Therefore, at a suitable stage, I think Trump can really try to put all the NATO countries together. It's not very difficult for him to do that. Right now, he's finding that the Israelis and the Iranians are fighting. He tried to act as a peacemaker between India and Pakistan, and the Indians said, no, you never got involved. I mean, you did give some good ways, but it was the Pakistanis who asked for it. So therefore, I think he can make a difference in the US-Russia bilateral treaty. And I think if they can come to that understanding, I think we can move towards peace and prosperity for mankind. I think that can be the major legacy to be left behind by two people, Trump and Putin. I mean, they may have various other feelings among the people, but I think this can be the way that they can try to go for peace and for world peace.
Thank you, Ambassador Shashank. I'll go to the second question. It is from Dr. Shrikant Chopra, who is my medical school alumni. And this question is specifically addressed to Major General Asthana. With great respect to General Asthana, he is being very generous to Russians by giving them the benefit of doubt. They didn't want to capture Kiev. They absolutely did want to capture the capital and occupy the whole of Ukraine. Most observers agree. But for Indian establishment, which surprisingly towing the Russian government after a terrible setback that suffered at the hands of patriotic and fierce Ukrainians, occupying sovereign nations cannot and should not be justified. Major General Asthana.
Yeah, interesting question.
And Russia and Putin.
Okay, no problem. Interesting question. Let me answer that. See, when we analyze as military analysts, we are neither biased nor we look at as to what was the political game behind it. Now let me put it this way: when Russians were surrounding Kiev, this encirclement of Kiev, they had about 1 lakh soldiers. That is 100,000 soldiers. At that point of time, Ukrainians had 600,000 soldiers. Russians used mechanized infantry to surround Kiev. They had very less mechanized foot infantry, which can fight in built-up areas. So therefore, they did not have the military capability to capture Kiev. That is the conclusion. Similarly, if you see as far as preparation for war is concerned, after Crimea, that is 2014, if Russians were preparing, so was Ukraine. So it's not that both sides were not preparing for the kind of confrontation, because things were happening in Donbas region in some manner or the other, maybe in the asymmetric domain or whatever. But the fact is, we know what it amounts to fighting in built-up area and capturing a built-up area. So therefore, Russians did not create that capability. They certainly thought that with Kiev being surrounded, maybe by the shock and awe effect and the psychological pressure, maybe Zelensky gives in. Maybe there is or Zelensky flies off from Ukraine itself, or maybe the kind of support they did not anticipate, the kind of support which they will get from the Western countries. So therefore, they did try, shall I say, psychological impact on Zelensky. But as far as physical capture of Kyiv is concerned, that was not the case. But conversely, by threatening Kyiv, what was happened was that their Donbas defenses were very well strengthened by Ukraine. Because what Ukraine had thought before the offensive was launched, what they had thought was that Russia is claiming Donbas, and therefore their main attack is going to come from Donbas. And therefore their defenses were very thick layered in that. Now to soften up that defenses, Russians would have bought a lot of casualties, and that is what their plan was. So after threatening Kyiv, the advantage was that a fair amount of Ukrainian forces had to move the other side, and that is what we call in military as turning movement and turning the defenses of Donbas region. And with that turning of defenses, these Donbas defenses got softened, and therefore Russia could make major gains in Donbas. As far as Ukraine is concerned, so that's why they pulled back also, because they knew that Kyiv, it is beyond their capability. Even today, when people say that Russia wants to capture Kharkiv, capturing Kharkiv is beyond their capability. They don't have the infantry of the kind which is required to capture a built-up area of the size which is required. Because see, in the built-up area, every building and every bunker can be used as a pillbox, and every bunker can be used as shall I say, building can be used as a pillbox. So it becomes very difficult. It's not all that easy, and they did not have that capability. So that is my military assessment. As far as the last part I must highlight here, because this is important as soldiers. Patriotic and fierce Ukrainians. Let me tell you, I've served in United Nations and I've served with all kinds of militaries. Russians are no less patriotic and they are no less fierce. And with so many casualties having bought in Second World War, they not only won the war, they did reach Berlin as well. So it is bad to underestimate a particular country or a particular soldiers. As far as the respect is concerned, I respect Ukrainian soldiers as much as I respect Russian soldiers. Ukrainians have fought very well, no doubt about it, and they do earn that much of respect. And not only that, as soldiers, we do respect the soldiers of the enemy side as well. In Kargil war, we did respect the Pakistani soldiers who laid down their life and did their cremation when Pakistani military refused to accept them. So, having seen both the armies, I mean, let's have no doubts about it, that Russians are chicken-hearted or something like that, and Ukrainians are the only patriotic people or fierce fighters, and Russians are not. I don't contribute to that idea. So
thank you,
I have to
General
be balanced.
Asthana. You have made it amply clear. So let's end the discussion on that particular question.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go to the next question. It's from Kyle William Marston from Boston, US. What is the panelist perception of the widespread and multi-platform dissemination of data regarding Ukraine-Russia conflict, its monetization, adulteration, and use in sculpting narratives in outside elections? Who wants to go first?
So, yeah, I'll take that,
Okay, Amod.
So this is not really old technique, right? This has been there. This technique of adulteration of information using the media, the communication, it's been from age old, since the war was really invented, when men really grew up to start loving and hating each other, right? The creation of narrative from the point of view that Russia is bad, and on the other side, America is bad. They are the enemy number one. It's also, if you look at the Middle East, where the narrative that Americans are the aggressors is very prevalent, right? So that wrong perception, that wrong narrative is sometimes created from both sides of the aisle. I would not just mention that it is a problem only created by one. It's not just a one-way problem. It's actually both the way problem, using the media in a way to set up their own narrative. Now, what really can be really helpful is if there is a reality check on how the degradation of society that occurs, and as when you see all these narratives taking shape and form, when that perception starts going down into seeing that how many number of people have died, how many number of resources have been just hijacked and have been misused. That's what exactly President Trump is trying to promote. The traction is less because there should be a handshake from two people, and it cannot be just one hand going in front. But certainly, I think there is some method to this madness as well, right? And communication really doesn't help in solving this madness. So I think this will continue till the war is there.
Thank you, Mr. Desai. Any other panelist wants to jump in on this particular
Can I-
question? Yes, Brigadier sir.
Okay, narrative building has become a very important part of the war per se. More than the war, it is the narrative which is being built up. And this is what is unfortunately is happening. And both sides, I totally agree with Mr. Desai that both sides are building equal amount of narrative. But what gets lost in this narrative building is that it aggravates the situation. It aggravates the players, and it does not help in any way to resolve conflicts. This is unfortunate part of the narrative building. Particularly in this particular case, we have to accept one fact is that the Ukrainian military was 6 lakh strong. It's the second largest military in Europe. After Russia, there is no bigger military in Europe other than the Ukrainian military. People forget this fact. And that military was trained and brought to the level of sophistication by providing resources by the West, by NATO and other things. So they were invested in it. So they were keen to play that narrative. The game of narrative was played to ensure that it psychologically impacts the Russians. The Russians are now playing the same narrative game to psychologically impact the whole issue of Nazification. Is a game of narrative. The whole idea is that Mr. Zelensky is a Nazi. He belongs to a Nazi setup. If he's removed, there will be much better people who are more democratic people will come to power, and those people will be more acceptable to us. So the game of narrative, we're seeing that in our recent conflict with Pakistan. I mean, on the 10th of May, Pakistan was situation, it was standing naked. We could have done anything which we want, all air defenses, everything was down. And yet, the world's perception today is that Pakistan had some kind of an equivalence with India in the air, and as well as when the war ended, it did not happen in the manner that everybody understands now through pictures and satellite pictures. But the world belief is this, that look, it was something of our 60-40 match in India 60 and Pakistan 40, that kind of a situation. So the narratives are very important. And unless you make the narratives, your countries use narratives to push their agenda. Basically, it's an agenda pushing thing, and it is part of the democratic, global system, and as part of the diplomatic side also, in which the whole game is played to looking for predominance in a conflict scenario.
Thank you, Brigadier Sahgal. At this juncture, I'll bring another person into this discussion, and that is Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, who is patiently listening among the audience. Ambassador Kapoor, coming back to the original question, can Trump 2.0 administration end the Ukraine-Russia war? What are your views on that? Ambassador Kapoor?
Yeah.
Ambassador Kapoor, are
Can
you
you hear
there?
me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Okay. And let me switch on the video also. Okay. So it has been very interesting to listen to all the panelists. And I think the war has gone on for a very long time. Trump 2.0 has tried very hard. His team has tried very hard. and they have not succeeded so far. The very premise of the war was based on sort of wrong assumptions, may I put it that way. And till those assumptions are corrected, it'll be difficult to end the war. The primary assumption was the eastward expansion of NATO, which brings in a lot of insecurity and exposure to the Russian Federation. So if you have a country like Ukraine which becomes part of NATO, the entire western flank of Russia gets exposed, and the long-term game plan of NATO and the West European countries was to break up Russia into different countries. So in that perspective, till this aspect is agreed upon by Western Europe and by America in an unequivocal manner, America is now getting reconciled to the fact that NATO, Ukraine cannot become part of NATO, but Europe also has to come to terms with that. And Ukraine, which at one time was willing to agree to that premise in before February, before the attack, after the attack, in March 2022, when Zelensky almost signed that document saying that Ukraine will not become part of NATO, and then Boris Johnson flew down from London at the instigation of Biden to stop him from announcing that. So that primary premise, once that is met, then it becomes easier for the war to come to an end, or for Trump 2.0 to succeed in this effort. So I think primary effort now lies between Trump and Western Europe, the fractured alliance of Western Europe, which is supporting Ukraine, to be able to talk to each other and understand that after this is accepted and announced categorically and clearly, then I think there are other demands by Putin, which we all know. So then negotiations can start. But till this primary aspect is really very, very clear in everybody's mind in a sincere sort of fashion, till that time, I don't think there can be any peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Kapoor, for your very succinct point of view. To our viewers, Lord Hastings Ismay, the first Secretary General of NATO, had very famously said, the purpose of NATO is to keep Americans in the Europe, keep Soviets out, and keeps Germans down. So as far as NATO machinations are concerned, they would drag United States into every European conflict. That has been their perpetual policy. To keep Soviets out, Soviets disappeared in 1991. Frankly speaking, this is not a Ukraine-Russia war. This is de facto NATO-Russia war. And unfortunately, United States, by being part of NATO, has been stuck in it and has taken leadership role in the initial few years of this war to exacerbate the war. There was some talk actually to break Russian Federation into smaller provinces when this war started. That was the goal. But there has been a change in political leadership in United States. And there is clear-cut divergence between the US point of view and the NATO point of view. The best time to stop this war was in April of 2022. That point has gone. A lot of water has flown through the Potomac River and Moskva River. The peace probably under current conditions will not be achieved till NATO as an organization is alive. Frankly speaking, NATO needs to be disbanded in order to promote peace in Europe and by corollary in the entire world, because NATO had started to exercise extraterritorial activities in other conflicts affecting the balance of power. And that was a very serious thing. NATO was primarily formed to defend the Western Europe from the Soviet Union, as well as the North America as the partners across the pond. But NATO did intervene in Afghanistan, and NATO did intervene in other West Asian wars. So the recipe for peace and recipe for ending this war between NATO and Russia on the soil of Ukraine is to disband the NATO. And if President Trump wants to end this war, he will have to take an unequivocal position to disband the NATO as it has served its historical purpose, has become overambitious, gone astray, and is, frankly speaking, a very belligerent military alliance. So the prospects of peace do not lie in near future, just like Warsaw Pact was disbanded after dissolution of Soviet Union. NATO needs to be disbanded to promote peace. Till that is achieved, there will not be any peace in the Europe, because these tribal conflicts, tribal European conflicts will continue. With those closing comments, I'm very thankful to our 4 distinguished panelists, Ambassador Shashank, Brigadier Arun Sahgal, Major General Asthana, and Mr. Amod Desai. I'm also very thankful to Ambassador Kapoor, who is also part of our International Advisory Board and is always willing to give his point of view. My sincere and heartfelt thanks to our audience members on a Saturday morning here in US and Canada, and some from India who have joined for this roundtable discussion. Last but not the least, my thanks to Team CSA, Mr. Ripudaman Pachori and Mr. Rajiv Verma, who work behind the back, never show their face, but are intimately connected and play a very responsible role in organizing these kind of events. Thanks to everyone. And with that, we are running out of time. So we'll be closing this discussion. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.